I think it is the hardest time in history to be a student right now because of that screen time distraction. We see the negative impact every day in schools, and it really does have an impact on self-esteem, academic performance, motivation, all of it.
You're listening to the smartsocial.com podcast. This is our District Talk segment where we interview district leaders to learn how they're keeping students safe on social media. And we also ask them questions that we get from parents all over the country in our program. Now, let's get back to the interview.
Hi, my name's James Gilbert. I'm the superintendent of schools here in Mountain Home, Idaho. We're located in kind of south central Idaho. We have about 3,700 kids, and we have 8 schools that are currently open and 1 remote school that is closed for this year because there's no students in attendance in that area.
Superintendent, it's so great to have you here today as we talk about keeping kids safe on social media so they can be wildly successful in the classroom, around the district, in the community, and especially at home as they learn and become resilient. And the last step of what we want to talk about today is so they can someday shine online. Parents, that means after the age of 16, when Smart Social thinks it's safe for them to start thinking about an online brand because they're thinking about their college, career, internship, and an online portfolio. That's what we do here at smartsocial.com. Parents, as you know, if you've seen these episodes, we're here to not only listen to superintendents, but also principals and parents and everyone along the way to help guide you so that you can keep your kids safe in this busy digital world. We call it the Superintendent Spotlight, addressing parent questions. Superintendent, I really want to welcome you here today. I'm excited to hear your insights. And the first question I have for you today that's really hot, it seems like, in districts we talk about. We've got pretty soon 200 of these episodes with district leaders just like you. It's all about parent participation. I want to pause for just a sec, and I want to speak to all of our parents and district leaders who are listening. When I left Disney Studios many years ago, when I worked on Finding Nemo, Pirates of the Caribbean, Lion King, all the big brands, I got asked to go to schools all over the country, including Idaho, many times. And they said, we want you to come and talk to our high schoolers and middle schoolers about how to not get fired and instead get hired in the future, because we got a problem. And as I would fly there and give student assemblies, the biggest privilege of my life, I spoke to 250,000 kids across the country over the course of a few years. We would also host a parent night event, which were wildly successful, except that the news would come and post positively about it. But sometimes we'd hear that only 20 or 30 parents would show up. I'd show up and they'd pay thousands of dollars and we'd bring books and all this stuff. And what they would often say, Superintendent, was all the parents who showed up are the ones that really don't need this knowledge. They're the ones that are most actively involved. So think of it like the parent-teacher organization or PTA. So the question I have for you, and this is what Smart Social is up against in the world, we want to overcome this in a more engaging parent world. What are your suggestions for other districts to increase this parent engagement? And are there any specific channels or events that get the biggest turnout? Or, Superintendent, do you got a story for us where only 7 people showed up? I know I've been in some speeches and there's no shame. Maybe only the principals and the teachers showed up and no parents could make it because there was a competing event or something like that. Has that ever happened to you? And what are some of your ideas on how we as a community, as a nation who want to serve these parents, how can we overcome that?
Josh, I think that's a great question. And honestly, it's been asked before. And to me, this is the question that if we can ever figure out how to improve this, participation is the key to almost everything we do in education. A lot of times people want to refer to the 50s as the golden era of public education. And I think what often gets associated with that was parent involvement. Like parents were involved with their kids' education. And over the last couple of decades, you've seen a shift in that. And it's for a variety of reasons. I mean, we have more homes where both parents are working, not just one job, but 2 or 3 jobs. We've got social media influences that are distracting students, parents, everybody. And so this is a hard part. When I look at participation at our school events, the best one I always think of is parent-teacher conferences. You're highly likely to have really great turnout at your elementary schools, but as kids get older, there's less parent participation in those conversations with teachers about what their children are doing. And I think that's a missing component with it. With that said, I do think that utilizing some of the messaging and tools that are available through social media is a way to at least reach out so that there's some communication going. But I'm not going to pretend like I have the answer to this. I am a firm believer that if we had parent involvement in everything we do, that most of the issues with public education would be non-existent.
Yeah, true. It is a big one to overcome. And we're excited to do this together with districts just like yours. And any tips that any of our viewers, if you have any tips, ideas, suggestions, leave them in the comments. Let us know. We're here to listen and learn. The next topic that I have for you, I'd love your advice on, is the biggest topic that we have right now: excessive screen time impact on student behavior, student feelings, their behavior, their outcomes. And the question is, how are you seeing excessive screen time impact kids' motivation, self-esteem, academic performance, and decision-making in the district?
Yeah, great question. And I'll preface this with what I've found myself saying a lot lately. I think it is the hardest time in history to be a student right now because of that screen time distraction. We see the negative impact every day in schools, and it really does have an impact on self-esteem, academic performance, motivation, all of it. And really, you think back prior to everybody having, one of these in their hand, you think of the bullying that occurred at schools. The reality was kids could get away from it once they left school. There was some downtime away from it. And not saying that it was right, but at least a kid could leave school at the end of the day and not have to deal with the bully. Well, now that continues, it continues until the point that phone is put up for the night, if it even is. And so we watch this with students. We're asking a lot of kids that don't have the brain development at that age to make good decisions on social media. I look at it this way. We wouldn't expect kids to be able to have the ability to deal with that scenario if it was occurring live at the moment. Yet we somehow made it okay, as a society, that this continues on social media. And for everything positive with the technology age, I think we're seeing more and more negative than anything with it. And not saying that they don't have their place, that technology doesn't have its place, but when these systems and apps and everything else were developed, I truly don't believe that a teenager's mental health was ever considered until after the fact. And, I'm a dad of 2 daughters, and I've watched this with my own kids. Unless you're willing to be that parent that really regulates that screen time, it's not realistic to think that a kid's going to have that ability to self-regulate.
Yeah, so true. And for all the parents listening right now, we've seen some stuff in the news lately that some of the best psychologists are saying if your 5-year-old isn't listening to you at a really young age, you have to say it 4 times. That's okay, because sometimes they have 1/4 of the brain development that you might have at 25. So let's be easy on them. And what I'm really saying there, and I think the superintendent might agree, is there's a lot of brain development that happens before the age of 18 and doesn't really fully equipped until the age of 25, I believe. There's studies that are all over the board, but let's just pick that date. There's a lot going on, and a lot of students are not going to have that vocabulary to know, Mom, I'm addicted. And parents, if you're like, oh no, it's not an addiction, studies are showing video games, and it's not all bad. There is a lot of good to the internet. But with everything else, I am addicted to ice cream and I love it. But with everything else, I can only have a small portion throughout the week, right? And so when we know that, and I know that about myself, we also need to look at social media as ice cream. We do it as a family. That's good. If it's alone in your bedroom at night, right before bed, probably not so good with a gallon of ice cream, which is exactly what untethered social media or screen time might be during the night. Okay, so Superintendent, I'm so grateful for you here today. One of the biggest questions that we get that I want to talk with our parents, listeners about right now is parents are always asking us, Josh, what advice would you give a student to help them recognize some of the red flags of a dangerous stranger online? Parents, what you're about to watch is an actual excerpt from one of our teen video projects. We've got a lot of teens in our weekly social media safety events. Let's hear from a real student about how she might help a friend recognize these red flags.
If I had a friend talking online to a stranger, I think that I would feel a little bit uncomfortable with the whole situation. I would advise against it because so many indirect issues can come from that, and it could cause something to be worse than if they had just unadded them in the first place. Some red flags that I would have to advise them to cut it off with this person or to stop engaging would be if the person starts to get very involved in their personal life, and they seem to be very intrigued in what's going on with them and wanting to know all the little details about what they do and who they are, and just very personal details and things that you wouldn't normally share with a stranger in real life. If they're very persistent and constantly wanting to talk to my friend or constantly trying to be involved in their life or wanting to speak to them, I feel like that's kind of a red flag. Another thing would be if they ask them to ever meet them anywhere in person right from the start, if they feel a sense of being uncomfortable or their intuition is just saying it's wrong, or if my intuition is saying something feels wrong with this, then I think that's a major red flag.
Parents, remember, Smart Social hosts these events every single week. We've got in the month of April, we're doing big giveaways. I can't promise this depending on when this episode is released, but in the month of April, we've got giveaways. You can enter for the chance to win a Amazon Kindle or a 3D printer for your family if you join one of our events. We've got Understanding Social Media's Impact on Teens. This is a really powerful event that is gripping. We've got the pros and cons of video games. If you miss one of our live events in the evening that's virtual, that's online, and yes, it's live with Q&A and hosted by yours truly, we have another one a couple days later, and we have the replay is available in your inbox immediately after it's over in one of 12 languages, which is incredible. We have it in English, we have it in Espanol, we have Mandarin, and the text is in 9 other languages. We've also got Social Media's Impact in late April, pros and cons of video games, and a live event in Espanol. Replays of all of our events are available on the front of our website, Shining Online, which is our trademark and really kind of my life's mission. Avoiding Strangers in Espanol as well, Understanding the Impact, Disappearing Messages, Optimizing Parental Controls, and Combating Online Bullying. We have dozens of these live events that are world-class. Again, parents, if your school district is a partner, come to one of our weekly live events. You're automatically entered for a chance to win one of our weekly giveaways. Hundreds of dollars a week that we give away based on whether you want a Kindle or a 3D printer. Those are the hottest two items people are begging for. Real teens, so you can bring your kiddos to these events. We don't preach. Instead, we share real stories from teens. And we have a premium parent newsletter that you get all year long, which is incredible. Parents, we want to show you if your district's a partner, this is what success looks like. This is my friend and a partner school district. His name is Jaron Wilson.
You are the one that needs to decide whether it's too much screen time or just right.
But parents and teachers know when it comes to teenagers and social media, that's easier said than done. So in an effort to protect students from the dangers of being chronically online, schools are doing something you might not expect, asking parents to get online too.
It makes an awareness to parents and students. It also gives them an understanding of some of the warning signs.
That's just one reason why Deron Wilson, an executive director of school engagement, says his district uses the app Smart Social. It's an online app designed to educate parents and students on how to avoid strangers and dangerous situations online.
Kind of like, I want to say, when you get involved in the cyberbullying, you might start friending somebody on an app, or somebody might say, hey, they might send me your picture.
Smart Social founder Josh Oakes says while there are a lot of things that can and should scare us online, the increased number of parents he is able to reach underscores the importance of growing social gathering spaces online.
Back in the day, I used to be one of the top social media safety speakers nationwide, but I was flying around to certain school districts and they're the best of intentions, but only 20 or 30 parents would show up. We get 10 times the amount of parents to show up, and they want to learn from the convenience of their home or office how to keep their kids safe on social media. They want to ask live questions. They want to learn how to have dialogue starters with their kids that actually get their kids excited about talking with their parents and strengthening that relationship.
Darcy Wertique, Spectrum News.
Okay, parents, don't forget all year long, some really exciting stuff. We do this weekly or about 50 times a year. All right, we're back to our guest. Superintendent, my question for you next is behaviors contributing to chronic absenteeism. This is one of the things we hear that districts are really looking at for lots of reasons. Parents, why does this matter to you? If half of the students were to not show up for a few weeks, that means serious budget constraints for the school district, where they might have to remove a few staff members. There might not be technology training for your kids. There might be programs that are cut. I mean, these are big red flags. We want to make sure every kid is at school, learning, becoming resilient, getting that love and attention from the teachers, the staff, the counselors, and everybody else. So the question for you, Superintendent, some districts are saying screen time, sleep disturbances, increased anxiety, depression, and cyberbullying are contributing to chronic absenteeism for some kids. Are you seeing this or any any other related online behaviors impacting student attendance?
Yeah, Josh, absolutely. I think that there's a direct correlation to some of the absenteeism issues and excessive screen time. And I think, what we typically see are those cyberbullying related issues. I kind of touched on this earlier, but that student that goes home and the bullying continues, it just creates an environment where that student has less of a reason to want to come to school. And then just the sleep deprivation factor, the reality is some of these kids the phone is never out of their direct control. And in the middle of the night, you hear that ping on your phone and you're waking back up to send your message out. It creates a cycle that I think for some kids is very difficult to break on their own. And so how does it impact schools? Here in Idaho, our funding is based on attendance. And so every time we have a kid who's not in attendance, it directly impacts the funding to the school district, which as you look at programming and staffing and everything else we offer, it all comes from that funding source. So I think that in today's world, this is happening more and more. And there's a reason why in our country right now, the mental health crisis, especially for youth, is at an all-time high. There's connection to all of these things that are going on. And so, yes, we're seeing that impact as well.
Yeah. For all the parents listening, you probably have great kids that are attending, but we're trying to support districts so that they can keep that funding. If they lose 5 to 6, 7% of their funding because 7% of the kids decide to not come for quite a while, that's a really big number. And districts are already hurting in many cases. So we want to support everyone in the community. And we've heard this moves the needle. Okay, the last question I have for you, Superintendent, is about screen time impact on the home environment. Another really big one that could lead to absenteeism if we're not careful. Sure. And also to parent happiness. That's a big part of what we want to do. If the kids are happier, the parents are happier. What do you suggest parents can do to create a more peaceful environment at home and set boundaries around excessive screen time and gaming?
I really love this one, Josh. My best advice is model the behavior you expect. And it's not just at home, but the next time you go to a restaurant, look around and see how many adults are engaged on their phone, but not engaged in the conversation with the person across from them. And kids see that. They see mom and dad doing that. And so model the behavior you want your kids to follow. And so that may mean set boundaries on when that phone can be out. One of the things I would recommend to any parent, and honestly, it doesn't matter the age, is if your child has a phone, there is a time at night that phone is put in a location that student doesn't have access to it. That's part of our job as a parent, is to restrict that. And I can tell you, I did that with my own kids. There was a set time that phone was up and it was done for the day. But also don't be afraid to get in and monitor where they're at. Get in their phone, dig around on their phone, get in on social media and see where they've been. But the big thing again is model the behavior that you want or expect from your kids. What we see at the school level is there is a tremendous amount of bullying that goes on by adults on social media. And these are parents. And so it's just frustrating when we have this expectation that kids aren't going to engage in that behavior when they see adults model that behavior. So my word of advice, model what you expect or want your child to do, but also set boundaries there. And don't forget, you're the parent. That's your job.
Yeah, well said. And parents, there's no shame about what we're telling you. We just want to remember that if you're an employer, if you've ever looked over a resume, you want to make sure that all of your team members who you're mentoring see the right way to do something. The same is true for the kiddos, right? They only know what they're taught, what they see. And by the way, one little tiny thing, Superintendent, I'd love your feedback on this. A lot of parents tell us, I feel like the kids don't have common sense these days. And my initial response to them after 1,000 episodes on podcast is common sense is not so common anymore if they're looking at YouTube. And my nephews have this, I love them to death, but they'll say things and you're like, where'd you get that? And it's because they absorb their common sense becomes who is mentoring them. And YouTube becomes the mentor, Instagram, TikTok. So parents, this is a chance for you to invest your time in and become the biggest mentor in your kids' lives, as the superintendent said. Superintendent, I want to give you last word. Did I get that wrong? What are your tips? What's your advice to parents?
You're spot on, Josh. And again, I fully acknowledge we live in a different world today, and there's a lot of stressors on parents. I can tell you, I was raised by a single mom for a lot of years. And so as a kid going through that, I understand that there's times it's hard to be a present parent, but please be that parent that's present when you can. And that's the biggest thing that will impact your child's life is how involved you are with them day to day.
Yeah, well said, Superintendent. Well, Superintendent, thank you so much. Thanks a lot for taking the time to do this today. We really appreciate it.
You bet, Josh. Thank you.
To all of our listeners, it's so great to have you here today. Smart Social is here to make sure your kids are safe on social media as a family so they can be successful and someday shine online after the age of 16. Parents, don't forget that no matter what you're doing online, remember to keep it light, bright, and polite because your kids are watching. We'll see all of you on the next episode. I'm Josh Oakes, the host of the SmartSocial.com podcast. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. Take care. Thanks for listening to the SmartSocial.com podcast. Smart Social helps parents understand technology and social media to keep their kids safe and successful. Be sure to join one of our weekly online live events to become the smartest parent on the block so you can keep your kids safe and protect their future. Also, don't miss our 450 plus online resources and replays you can watch on demand in multiple languages. Are you a school district wanting to unlock these resources for your parents? Reach out to us so we can protect your whole community each week. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you on the next episode.